Hello and welcome podcast viewers and listeners. This is 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. If you've followed my podcasts before, you'll know that I love connecting and hosting conversations with guest coaches to promote coaching and coaches, as well as sharing my love and value of learning. So this series 4, focuses on NLP or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's called NLP Life Lessons from Practitioners. So if you're trained in or you are training in the use of NLP, or maybe you're just fascinated by the concept, listen and watch on. Now, unlike previous episodes, I've decided to do something a bit different with this one. I'm going to share a story I read and find a helpful introduction to a technique or tool or strategy or model that's not solely attributed to NLP. In fact, it can be found in a number of fields of different types of intervention. So let's start with the story first. So maybe while you're listening to this, you might want to just close your eyes to absorb it. A man on a long journey comes to a wide, rushing river blocking his path. With no way round it and no bridge in sight, he chops down a tree and he uses the wood to build a small boat. The boat is remarkably sturdy, and the man uses it to navigate across the river safely. Now, before walking on to continue his journey, the man has a thought. What if I come across more rushing rivers that I need to cross? This boat will really come in handy. So he attaches the small boat to a pair of straps and begins to walk, dragging the boat behind him, just in case it becomes useful later in the journey. After an hour, he's made little progress and finds himself exhausted, as dragging the heavy boat through the bumpy terrain is really quite difficult. It becomes clear, holding the boat beyond the river was a mistake. Now, this can be seen as a metaphor for life. Throughout our own journey, we build boats, in inverted commas, to navigate the various rushing rivers that we encounter. And these boats can help us. They might even save us in these moments. But sometimes we choose to hold on to the boats far beyond the banks of the river, far beyond their usefulness to our lives. And we worry about future rivers and about our ability to build similar boats. So we cling to the old boat for fear of building something new. But when we hold on to something that we no longer need, we are holding ourselves back from being the person that we might be. So the question aligned to that story and that metaphor is, what boats are you still holding on to? What tools and habits and experiences, relationships or mindsets served you once well? And that's why we're holding on to them, because at one point they really did serve us well. What served you well but no longer provide value in your current terrain? So what we really want to do is to be able to trust in our ability to adapt and to build a new boat and to move forward at good speed when a new challenge arrives. So that story and that metaphor is a good introduction to an exercise called parts integration. The question behind it is, are you holding on to something that you no longer need? So let me share with you something about this technique, just basically when it can be used, and a very simple overview of how it works, what the process is. So parts integration can be used when a person's ready to resolve their inner conflict. It might be something that they're letting go of in order to accept something else, or it might be a dilemma or conflict, an inner conflict that they're experiencing. So there might be kind of several contradictory desires or beliefs. So a good example might be that the person has a desire for success, but the fear of the responsibility that comes with it is conflicting, is in a bit of a dilemma. So parts integration actually helps us to reconcile those conflicting parts. Now, how the process works is that we first identify the conflict. And there might be two maybe more internal parts causing the conflict. And the way that we identify them is to really get a good sense of what that part is about. And so we can use sensory related questions to inquire about what that might look like. And it helps to access your imagination. So we might ask questions like, what shape is that part? If it's success, what shape is success? Where does it sit in your body? What might it smell like? What would it sound like? What would it look like? Is it moving or is it still? So we get a kind of almost like what's called a summary representation of what success looks like to you. And once we've got that, we kind of acknowledge any resistance or challenge that is experienced with the conflict. So that's really important. Sometimes it's tempting when we experience resistance to push it away. And in fact, resistance tells us stuff. Resistance can tell us that there is a conflict, and it tells us a bit about what's going on with that part. But the important thing is that we recognize and acknowledge the part as valid. So we might say, actually, I'm more interested in success than I am about being afraid of the responsibility. And it's useful to get a sense of where we align, or which of the parts that we most align with or favour. But we need to accept and recognise the validity of both parts in being parts of ourselves. So what we might do is speak directly to those parts. So if I was a coach guiding through this process, I would speak directly to each of those parts, to success and to responsibility, almost creating a bit of a dialogue with those parts as though they were a person in themselves. And that's rather than having the person, the client, or you speak for them. And I would ask the parts, so I'd ask success, to identify its positive intention for that person. So what is success trying to do for you? And we'd elicit each part's positive intention. What's important about having that? What does having that part do for you? And what does having this allow the person to be, do, or have? I'd be addressing those questions to the part. And what would happen ultimately once we look at the parts, maybe there's two, maybe there's several, but actually we find they commonly have a similar or even the same positive intention, but they're just coming at that positive intention from a different perspective. So continuing the dialogue, we talk to both the parts or each of the parts together, and we ask them to share and agree on resources or how they might contribute or how they might stop being in conflict with each other in order that they can both in an integrated way deliver the same positive intention to the person. And what's often possible is to bring the parts together, sometimes to form a new part, sometimes to form a different configuration of the two parts, but with a different name. Sometimes just to have the parts shaped together or sit alongside each other in a way that's not in conflict. And once the client agrees that that's how they are happy with the two parts being together and there's no further resistance to them being in that way, we then discuss how the client now feels and what they intuitively feel that they might now do. So parts integration can be an exercise that's guided by and supported by a coach like myself, or with practice, you can use it yourself with any dilemma you experience or facing. Now, if you'd like to practice this with me, or you'd like to experience parts integration with me as your coach, and I would gift a session to you, then just contact me on julie@lifecoachingconvos.com, and I'll make sure that address is in the episode description. So a short episode today. Thanks for listening and watching. This has been 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and share and subscribe and tell me what you want to hear more about in 2020 Coaching Convos with me, Julie Crabb. Until next time.